The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Happy Friday afternoon, everybody. Thanks for spending part of your lunch with Marco D'Amico. I am Shaun Starr. Welcome to the live presentation of the Starr and D'Amico Show. The afternoon after the night that was the Montreal Canadiens getting doubled up again on a Thursday. It's becoming a weekly tradition, just getting outclassed in an 8-4 final on Alex Ovechkin night, 4 points. And the Montreal Canadiens potentially, Marco, dealing with another injury. Big thanks, of course, as you heard in the intro, to all of our sponsors. Thanks to Chuck and Evie and the fine folks at Little Bear for providing the best for all your pets' needs. Find them online at littlebearonline.com with delivery and curbside pickup, and the Black Friday extravaganza going on now. So take advantage of some great pricing and some great price points as we move forward. Marco, there's so many little tidbits from last night's 8-4 final. There's a silver lining, the fact that there was a chance they could have tied this game up. But I think I have my point of view of perhaps on what the air quote TSN turning point was yesterday. So good afternoon. What turned the tide in that Thursday night last night?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Canadiens were smack dab in the middle of it, but it was those two back-to-back bad goals from Samuel Montembeault. Coming out of that second period, I think that was really a backbreaker for them.
Yeah.
They were able to, after that point, kind of attempt to claw back, but they were cheating so much offensively that it would go back the other way and they get scored on again. So it created odd man situations, just a lot of disorganization in the defensive zone. And again, when you are not playing with confidence because your goaltending is not to the level that it should be, well, you tend to make conservative decisions, such as backing up in the defensive zone instead of going forward to stop a point shot, say on Jakub Chikrin's goal. Those are direct examples. So to me, there is a confidence issue, but there is also, from a strategy point of view, there are significant flaws that I feel like the Canadiens are absolutely going to need to address, because this is simply not sustainable at all.
The Tom Wilson hit on Jake Evans in that second period. Marco alluded to the Jakub Chikrin goal. Bang play right rough there. Kind of a frustrating night. I can't imagine what it must have been like for the players, particularly the Canadiens there, when you had 9 minor penalties called combined in that first 20 minutes, and then nothing in the second period. I mean, to me, that was a very important part of last night's game. What happened there, the lack of pushback. Arbor Jacki, Jaden Struble, both finishing the night with 0 hits on the record. What was your take on, let's get into the Wilson hit on Jake Evans. Were you surprised there was a no call there? And follow that up with your take on the perceived lack of pushback in the aftermath of that collision.
Should there have been a penalty called on that? Absolutely.
I mean, you had a buffet choice there. You could have gone charging. You could have roughing. You could have gone headshot. You could have gone a lot of ways.
2 minutes for being mean. You could have gone any way, shape, or form. But in the Olympics, that's a 5 in a game.
All day.
So if it's a 5 and a game in the Olympics, how is it not even a 2 minute in the NHL? And so, again, to me, and we're seeing an epidemic of this, I prefer to kind of stay away from critiquing NHL referees. I think fans can take care of that well on their own. But even throughout the league, like this is starting to get a little ridiculous in terms of what is the range of acceptability, at what point is contact, and the little amount of time that is retroactively allowed for the league or the refs to go back and look at that. Does a player need to be sprawled out on the ice, soccer style, faking a heavy injury for them to be able to get calls from this? I personally, that's not Jake Evans' style, though he was on the ground. Obviously, that's what happens when you get hit in the head like that.
Yeah.
But to me, like, are we, is it really just going to be moving forward, like the consequence, not the action that gets called? Like, this is where I have issue with it. So yeah, and especially Jake Evans with the Canadiens, like, good Lord, could you imagine if the Canadiens are without Jake Evans for a long period of time? Like, your center depth becomes Nick Suzuki, Oliver Kapanen, and then
Joe Veleno.
Joe Veleno, and take your
Yeah.
pick of Florian Jacki, Owen Beck, or Alex
That's it.
Belzil.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, Evans came back. I think he played 28 more seconds, and then that was it for him after the Wilson hit. And as far as here we are at 12:06 in the afternoon on Friday, I haven't heard anything yet on Jake Evans. But I mean, what is Owen Beck? In the hypothetical world, if we go there with the Canadiens ready to entertain the struggling Toronto Maple Leafs, who lost on Adam Fantilli, goes home and always kills the Toronto Maple Leafs. Fantilli has 6 goals in 8 career games against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Always gets up for playing in his hometown, and scored twice yesterday. So the Leafs will roll up Saturday night 1-4-2 in their last 7. What about the Jake Evans factor? I mean, would Owen Beck be the first guy that you would think the management team would call up to replace, hypothetically? I don't know anything. Hypothetically, if Jake Evans can't go.
Man, that would be it's a tough call to make because there are other options. They could slide Jared Davidson to center. He has played center before, and then maybe put call somebody up on the wing, maybe like a Sean Farrell who's doing not bad. But then it becomes a question of, again, the Canadiens would be too small. So part of me is on the same wavelength of, if you're going to call somebody up, you want that gem. Is it Florian Jacki's time? Right? Like, I don't necessarily feel like he has overly earned the opportunity yet. And I think he'll be the first one to tell you that he hasn't either. He's not at where he was last year. But I think for what the Canadiens need at this point, they need a jolt. They need a guy. And we'll get to the lack of response on the Jake Evans injury. But they need a guy that when stuff like that happens on the ice is going to, even if he's not on the ice at that specific point, is going to bring a message. And I felt like the Canadiens tried to do that right after the hit. They got all super physical. It lasted 3 shifts, and then Capital scored. It's the same concept here. I feel like having you need different elements in your lineup. Owen Beck, yes, he has more NHL experience. He's safer, I find, overall. He's a guy you could put at center, a guy you could put at wing, strong on the faceoffs. So that may be his in. But I think Florian Jacki has the physical element that the Canadiens are missing, because if you're not going to be able to stay in the game at 5-on-5 through sheer talent alone, you're going to need some sandpaper. You're going to be tough to play against.
Goaltending. Equal across the board for both guys yesterday. Jakub Dobes, who came in to relieve Sam Montembeault, who allowed 3 goals on 10 shots. Dobes allowed 4 goals, made 21 saves, and an 8-4 loss. I mean, I don't know where they go from here other than continuing to hope, and hope is never a strategy. But we're talking about, like, collectively, the team, Marco, has an 872 save percentage. There are, I think, 2 or 3 clubs that are worse than them, maybe just 2 in Edmonton and St. Louis. And I think the Oilers are like 871 at the bottom of the barrel. So the Canadiens are like literally decimal points away. I mean, there's nothing they can do at this point. Like, I don't think we're at the conversation point, and feel free to disagree. If Kakinen is someone that they need to call up because both guys don't have the net, obviously, here.
No, I don't think the Canadiens are going to carry 3 goalies again.
No.
It was the talk of the town for the entire season when they were carrying those 3 goalies. So I don't think they're going to go through that again. And, some of the other questions that were thrown my way were, well, what about calling up Jakub Fowler, who is doing quite well in Laval? Exactly.
Right.
Um,
What a disaster that
you,
would be. I would avoid that
you,
like the plague.
I can understand the reasoning behind why
Sure.
fans would want to see that. But then I would also caution, ask guys like Spencer Knight, ask guys like Devon Levi, ask Carey Price what it's like to get called up and be seen as a savior or asked to be a savior when a
Yeah.
franchise is going through tough times and you're a 20 or 21-year-old goaltender. I mean, you have a lot more to lose long term in messing up that development pattern than you would in the maybe the game or two more that you would win in the time that he would be up with the Canadiens. That's the way I see it. Like, Jakub Fowler is one of the top 3, arguably one of the top young goaltenders not playing in the NHL right now. And there's a lot riding on him. A lot of scouts I've spoken to have seen Jakub Fowler as a can't miss future number 1 goaltender in the NHL. Well, and when I mean number 1 goaltender, I mean like unquestioned, like not going to be looking back a year or two from now and being like, oh, he just had a good year, like unquestioned number 1.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Canadiens have been very conservative with other players in terms of trying to not ruin their development. You look at Adam Engstrom. I think Adam Engstrom could easily play for the Canadiens on the third pair right now, but they want to allow him to continue to grow. So if they're not panicking there, I doubt. I don't have information on this, but this is what I've heard from folks in Laval. I doubt that they're going to rush to call up Fowler, who is just entering the first year of his entry-level contract. There's lots of time for him. If they ever had to push the panic button, I think Kakinen would get the call up, and then they would just have Fowler be the number 1, unquestioned number 1, because now they split games between him and Kakinen, which is normal in the AHL.
Yeah.
I don't see Jakub Fowler needing a call up. I think that would be a knee-jerk reaction. And if this administration wants to show that it's different from those that have come and passed, then they need to show a little bit of restraint, which I'm sure they will when it comes to the development of Jakub Fowler.
Interesting comments in the aftermath of the Canadiens losing in a big way 8-4 at the Bell Center last night. Whether it was Brendan Gallagher when asked about the lack of confrontation in that game, where this is the second time now that was Washington's first return to the Bell Center since they dispatched the Canadiens in 5 games in the first round last year. And we saw the hit that had a huge impact in the series in the playoffs when Tom Wilson knocked Alex Carrier's block off. And then Tom Wilson runs high on Jake Evans, arguably changes the game at that point. Still no physical pushback. What did you make of Brendan Gallagher's comments when he was asked about that and more and said, hey, we're chasing the scoreboard here? Hockey at the end of the day is still an intimidating, physical, violent game. I don't think anyone's suggesting that they go around chasing, looking for redemption at that point. But as you pointed out earlier, the physical element lasted for a brief moment in time. I can understand, Marco, why fans are a little disappointed that, again, we're watching this same guy change the game with a nasty hit, and the Canadiens, let's be honest, really didn't do much about that. So Gallagher talking about we're chasing the scoreboard. What was your read on his comments?
Yeah, I mean, chasing the scoreboard is exactly what they do. They get scored on. How many times now this season have they been scored on the first shot?
Crazy. I couldn't believe it happened. And Evans,
4,
too. And they did
5?
well in the faceoff circle, and they lost that draw clean.
Yep. And I didn't like Montembeault's positioning on that first goal from Ovechkin. That you have not in. I wouldn't even say overcommitted. I think he didn't commit enough.
Well, he slid out of to me, his positioning was just
he slid the right way, but it's you have to commit the whole way. You can't just compact butterfly it. You have to stick the hand out. You have to have the pad out because you have to cover the full shooting lane. And it's Alexander effing Ovechkin
in his office. Yeah,
in his I wouldn't. Whatever. Let's say his secretary's office, but yes, it's just. Especially on a power play, on a quick draw play like that, you have to be expecting that if there is a loss, it's going to go straight to Ovi and he's going to take that shot, right? So we've seen this time and time again. Ovechkin has scored on Montembeault this way more than once before. So that I 100% attribute to Montembeault not being in the right position. Obviously, Jake not winning that face-off. Yes, I understand that. But again, the moment that happens, you're in a chase mentality. And the issue at hand, and I think this speaks to the lack of veteran experience on this team, this is where the losses of Joel Armia and Christian Dvorak really kind of come into the picture here, is those guys generally calm the play down. Those guys generally knew where to go, right? Like, to me, you have a face-off win like that, your winger plays to the inside, right? You have your face-off circle, center, and then Ovechkin is the winger over here. Well, your winger, which in this case I believe was Josh Anderson, has to be right next to him to block that shooting lane and to even block the passing lane, right? And we didn't see that. So when Martin St. Louis says that they're getting away from basics, that's what they're talking about. Not only is the goaltending to blame, but that shot never should have gotten there in the first place.
Well, that's the other thing, the follow-up on Martin St. Louis, talking about how he felt like he was in the time machine going back 13, 14 months, watching this team develop bad habits. Mike Matheson was quite critical, giving too many opportunities, too many odd man rushes, numbers going the other way. And it's something, we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks as it's been brought to the surface on a consistent basis, right? Just the zone coverage in the Canadiens' end just remains an area of real need. But what do you think specifically Martin St. Louis referred to when he talked about old bad habits from 14 months ago showing their face in the Bell Center on Thursday night?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with confidence, right? You look at Jakub Chychrun's goal. Yes, obviously, and it's not unlike when Kirby Dach went down after blocking that shot last week. I believe I think it was against the Dallas Stars. I'd have to double check. And yes, it was against the Dallas Stars, where he went down and it was basically a 4-on-5, and they just misplayed it completely. Well, the same thing happened last night when Jake Evans got hit. And then you basically, it was discombobulated entirely in the defensive zone. Yes, it was off a lost draw or a lost possession after they had just iced it. So everybody was gassed, understood. But being in the right position is what's important. And so you see Jakub Chychrun get the pass. The entire Canadiens, like all 5 players, are basically on the other side of the defensive zone, and Chychrun can just walk right in. And there was an opportunity to get in the way of that shot. There was. Jacob Fowler. Wow. Noah Dobson backing up on that play. That does not happen if you are a player playing with confidence, right? You're more afraid of the pass than the shot, and you're leaving the goalie the shot. But the goalies aren't in a mindset to stop those kinds of shots, right? So Jakub Chychrun's shot is the kind of shot you would expect a goalie to block.
Yeah.
But they're not playing optimally, right? And he's got a howitzer of a shot. Like he has a great shot, just Chychrun. So that's the analysis I look at, is that, well, where are all the other forwards? Where was Slafkovsky on that play?
Oh boy, tough. That was a tough night for Slafkovsky. I thought he was very slow to react. Agreed.
Exactly, right? And so like there's other players too, but when you look at that play in a nutshell, you're like, Dobes should have had that. And I agree, but it never should have got there. And that's the issue. That's the problem when we're looking at defensive structure. And again, this is fixable. The Canadiens have shown that they've been able to do this before.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I really feel like they're playing well below their standards, both defensively and in net, that this isn't a proper representation of what this team is when they're in the medium, when they're not going through each extreme, right? Right now, they look like one of the top 5 worst teams in the league. Say it. They look like one of the top 5, the bottom 5 teams in this league. And until they shore up the defensive side of things and they're a little bit more disciplined with their structure and they're less overwhelmed by what happens on the ice, this is going to keep happening. And to me, this is a sign of a lack of experience. This is what you would call a symptom of having the youngest team in the NHL.
I wouldn't disagree with one bit of that when it comes to, how to dig yourself out of the hole. And to your other point about how the team looks, if oh boy, Hankey's going crazy. To your
Therapy day for
earlier
the dog
point,
too.
yeah, I don't know. See, he's had it up to here as well. He's frustrated. He doesn't like all the negativity, But when it comes to when it comes to how the team has been playing, right? If you just watched it in a vacuum, you can, I think, have the same takeaway. And for the first time since the start of the season, the Canadiens are out of a playoff position here. It's still obviously very, very early here. They're sixth in
Yeah.
their division now. And part of me, I think, just to elaborate on, chasing the game, I hate to use the word tired. I think they're probably mentally fatigued, having to
Well,
continually chase a game, right? Like it
yeah.
wears on you, knowing that, you go into a game, you're probably prepared, you probably feel good about your chances. Washington's here. They had played the night before, they traveled, they check in late. Things are,
That's the
you've been
biggest
off,
thing for me.
you've been off since Monday. And then the first freaking shot on goal, you're chasing now right away. You're chasing right away. I can understand for a young team, to back up your point, how that could be psychologically just, here we go again, trailing.
Mm-hmm. No, and 100%. I think part of it is mindset, right? Like part of it is what are you willing to do? And I think when you look back at how the Canadians played in the first period, like that power play goal, case in point, why the Canadians power play doesn't work and why the Canadians power play could work.
Right.
And it's ironic you talk about tired because Brendan Gallagher had himself, a pretty good first half of the game with a goal and an apple. And his goal, I mean, clear as day. It's exactly what you got to do. Get
Yeah.
pucks on net. Noah Dobson takes a shot. Brendan Gallagher fights for position, knocks in the rebound. Like going back to basics, I feel like that's what they're missing. That's what they don't have. And if they don't get back to their basics, if they aren't pushing pucks towards the net, unfortunately, you are going to be pushed to the perimeter, which was what the Canadians were. They were lucky that it wasn't the best outing for Washington for Washington from a defensive and goaltending perspective. I thought Lindgren could have been a whole lot better, but it is what it is, right? And so when you're looking to see how you can best take away from this game, the first thing that I would look at is, well, where did they find success? They found success by shooting as much as they could and taking advantage of the rebounds and the loose pucks. Look at Suzuki's goal. Bounced off a Washington Capitals defenseman right to his stick, shot, goal. Boom.
Yeah.
Just I think I say this often. The more actions you take in the offensive zone, the more likely you are to get the outcomes that you desire. The one thing that you don't want is to do what Lane Hudson did at the end of the third period, where he tried to overcommit, go around. And again, I talk about defensive awareness. The winger on that play does not cycle back to take his spot, and it just becomes a 3-on-1 the other way. That's the kind of stuff that we go back to and we say, I don't think it's a personnel issue. I mean, the Canadians obviously are not very deep right now at forward, but I don't think it's necessarily a personnel issue. I think this stems primarily from a strategy issue. And this is why I think you saw a very frustrated Martin St. Louis, because the questions are starting to be asked. Do the Canadians need more experience, not only on the ice, but in the dressing on the coaching staff? Are they in need of a more experienced defensive tactician? Like, what is going to help this team evolve? Because if you're afraid they've gone back 14 months, how are you going to bring them back to the present and then set them forward for the future, right? And it's very early to start calling for anything drastic to happen from a coaching perspective. But these are worthwhile conversations internally with the Canadians of, well, what aren't we doing, or what have we gotten away from in terms of systems and strategies that made us successful that is not happening right now?
Well, I guess just to push back on that, right? Like, I think they're fine on the bench personally. And again, I'm not in the room. I don't know what these are these video sessions and these talks are like, right? But I like Martin St. Louis' attitude after the game. I liked his demeanor on the bench yesterday. I like that he was verbal. I like that he didn't like some calls on the ice. And he mentioned afterwards that they're gonna sit down and they're gonna talk about it. But at the end of the day, and I know it's cliche to say, Martin St. Louis doesn't put the pads on. Martin St. Louis doesn't wear a stick, doesn't hold a stick. So he can teach these guys, he can prepare these guys. And I hate to use this as a cop-out, but like you've got Arbor Jackeye out there playing what, 13 and a half minutes? Jaden Struble playing under 13 minutes. And both of these guys have no impact, had no impact on the hockey game yesterday. And I found it interesting that Struble was asked on Habs Lunch with Sean Campbell and Mitch Gallo on TSN 690 when the boys were covering practice with Brossard. This is a great anecdote. When the boys asked him today, what went into the fight? What happened behind the scenes with you and Zadorov Saturday night against Boston? And the answer was he was chilling at Jackeye's house. And they were talking, of course, what do hockey players do? They talk about hockey. And both of them were talking, okay, how do we have an impact in this game? And Struble's idea was, I'm going to go after Zadorov. And so they're clearly thinking about how can we put our fingerprints on this game? And it just, like, I don't want to be disrespectful to Jackeye, but brother, if you ain't out there banging and crashing and creating a physical problem, what are we talking about here with this guy? I mean, these guys had no impact on the game when they needed to have an impact because they don't have Caden Gooley, which throws everything off kilter. Everything is off balance.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've seen Jaden Struble be able to impact a game without his fists, right?
I agree, especially with
a game like last night. I think we could throw out the idea that Jackeye is a deterrent for any dirty hits. He's not.
I've never believed that.
Not.
Yeah.
He's not. He does add a nice physical presence when he decides to be physical, but at the same time, you don't want him to take an unnecessary penalty. So it's all about being able to time your physicality, to time your aggression. Not everybody in the league is as lucky as Tom Wilson, where they do get away with some pretty blatant penalties. I will point that out. But to me, what gets the team motivated after having just conceded a goal and being conceded two goals, actually. Well, no, that was the fourth goal. So after having conceded those goals, you're in the middle of it. And it's hard to say because it's hard to say because then the Canadiens did come back and score again to get within one. So I don't want to say that it would have taken a Jackeye fight or a little bit of rough stuff from him to send a message, because the Canadiens did shortly score after that. But I would say, like, this is the kind of game where you want to send a message both to your own bench and to the players playing against you on the ice that liberties are not going to be taken against you. My only problem is Jake Evans is a magnet for exposing himself to dangerous hits. Magnet in his career. It has always been that. Caden Gooley are two of the players I've seen protect themselves the least when it comes to putting themselves into a position to get hit. And guys like Alex Carrier, there it is. Alex Carrier is just an absolute test dummy when it comes to getting hit in the NHL. Just one of the players that's taken the most amount of hits this season in the NHL. So these three guys come to mind. And so when I see Jake Evans get hit like that, part of me is like, Tom Wilson, man. He knows his targets. He knows who to get in those kinds of delicate situations. And it's really unnerving to watch. It's very unnerving. And now the Canadiens, if they're without Jake Evans as well, on top of Alex Newhook, on top of Patrick Laine, on top of Kirby Dach, like, you just lost 4 top 9 guys, in my opinion. It's very hard to come back from.
Well, and that's it. And so it's a natural transition into, a couple of different times this week on the channel, through your reporting at RG about, the trade activity, the lack thereof, the reasons why. And you can tell, by now, if you're looking at the standings, right? The Montreal Canadiens slipped to 6th in their division. They're out of a wild card spot. But it's only by 1 point. I mean, the Buffalo Sabres are 6 points out of a wild card spot. Toronto, 3 points out of a wild card spot. Montreal and Toronto tomorrow night at 7:00. I mean, you don't need to be in the weeds to understand that one player isn't going to fix what's going on with Montreal. But I wonder about, how Kent Hughes views what's happening, a 5-game winless slide, and what the reaction is. Obviously, you want your guys to fight internally to buck up and solve this problem. But we're not talking about one player that comes in via trade, Marco, and like presto, the Canadiens are back on track. It's a much larger issue than just that.
No, and exactly that. I mean, someone spoke to me. I remember, I think it was at the beginning of the season. Everybody saw what happened with the Montreal Canadiens last spring, saw the excitement after the acquisition of Balduc and Dobson, saying that the Canadiens had the most active summer of any team, which is true. But then people started saying funny things like the rebuild is over.
Right. Yeah. We asked that question was being asked 100%. 100%.
And that is the most dangerous sentence in hockey. And I will state this till I am blue in the face. You know when the rebuild's over? When they win a round.
Yeah.
That's when the rebuild's over. That's when they have reached a point that they are not only successful in a regular season, but they are playoff successful. Right now, they're not able to be successful. And I'll state this one more time.
Go ahead.
Without Nick Suzuki, this is a bottom 10 hockey team. Bottom 5, arguably, without Nick Suzuki.
Yeah.
To go into this season hoping that Ivan Demidov was going to be the one to line drive a second line with Oliver Kapanen and hope to make the playoffs, that is a very rough, like, there's a lot of hope that goes into that. And that to me is the sign still of a rebuilding club. And I think you see it, right? Their best elements are still either they're either still teenagers or early 20s, like 21, 22.
Yeah.
That to me is still a rebuilding club. This club is not where it's going to be at its peak. So I 100% think they're rebuilding. If fans thought that Michael Hage was going to come in and be the 2C at the end of his college career, then you're still rebuilding, because no competitive team would have a 20-year-old come in and be their 2C and be competitive, right? So this team is still rebuilding. And so to me, the real question that needs to be asked is, given the injuries, given the goaltending performances, is it necessarily the end of the world for the Canadiens if they take a step back this season?
Yeah.
If they don't make the playoffs, should the Canadiens be sacrificing prime assets now to try and stay in it and get a guy that's in his mid to late 30s on a long-term contract? I'm talking about the Stamkoses, the Kadris. Is it worth sacrificing assets for that just to save face this season? Because to me, that seems like a Marc Bergevin type of move.
Agreed. That's a panicky move. Yes.
That seems like a
short-sighted,
a Gauthier move. That seemed like something that Bob Gainey did at the end of his tenure, right? Those kinds of panic trades.
Yes.
And I don't think one trade is going to save this team. You know, a lot of people talked about how the Alex Carrier trade changed the dynamic for the Canadiens. It's convenient to use that point because that was the turnaround point, and it does help. But the momentum really began after the Christmas break, and it's not by chance. Whenever the Canadiens had just a smidgen of time off, be it the Christmas break, be it the 1 week off that they get a year, like mandated 1 week bye week that they get, the Four Nations, every time the Canadiens came back from one of those, they started on fire.
Yeah.
Because they overused their core. The moment anything happened to their core, they would start to descend. And then they get a break, their core would be re-energized. Boom, you're back up on the winning streak. What does that mean? You have a really strong core. You don't have any secondary scoring being able to come in to properly or surround them.
And, just to add to that, right? Because I, again, led you in with it's not one trade. It's not one addition. And I think you nail it when you talk about, and it's a compliment to Hughes and Gordon that these are big picture, not reactionary. Their moves aren't dictated by emotion because of a lopsided loss or a five-game winless streak. But let me bring this to the table for a second, right? Last season, okay, who they don't have today. Patrick Laine scored 20 goals in 52 games. UL Armia played 81 games, had 29 points and 11 goals.
Yep.
Christian Dvorak played all 82 games, had 33 points and 12 goals. Contrast that now, Brendan Gallagher had an unbelievably healthy season, 82 games, 38 points, 21 goals. Gallagher got his first. Joe Veleno got his first. Evans, I don't think anybody that watches this team seriously thinks about, well, Jake Evans, where are the goals, Jake? No, it's not that. But
well, I think it's fair to say The Canadiens' bottom six last year considerably
Et
outperformed.
voila. Et voila. So like there is that mix of missing the goals, missing the savviness of good veterans that have the reps
Yeah.
and are more responsible. I'm not saying they made a mistake, but to me, it provides more context into why things have gone sideways in the month of November. It's not,
Yeah.
again, I'm not
Well,
saying they would be better if they had Armia and Dvorak. They might be, but it's not the main reason why, in my opinion.
yeah, Dvorak is a kind of understandable. I mean, you look at the center market and the way that it is, you knew that the salary was going to be high. I didn't think it would be 5 million high,
Yeah,
but you knew it was going to be high. Um, I think Armia does hurt penalty kill wise,
for sure.
physicality wise. He was a big boy as well, was able to withstand teams like the Washington Capitals with a little bit more ease than the rest of the lineup. You lose a guys like that and you don't replace them. That's what hurts to me is the fact that this is the youngest team in the NHL and you didn't bring in additional like you didn't
Yeah,
bring in additional experience or leadership. And I think in situations like what the Canadians are in right now, that's when you notice it the most is when they're in the dumps. And like power to Mike Matheson, he said all the right things yesterday. He's been
yes.
great for these younger guys in the room.
Uh-huh.
But again, we're talking about what two players under the age of over the age of 30 on this team right now. Three over the age of 30 right now. That's really tough to me. Like I
Yeah,
still consider like
yeah.
Noah Dobson a young veteran, sure, but like to me, like I understand there's a taboo amongst fans to acquire players in their 30s, 30 and up. Don't want to spend assets on that. I think I agree with that if it's, like marginal positions. But I think important positions like a veteran center to play on your bottom six or a winger that can play middle six and can move up in case there's an injury, like a little bit like we saw with Alex Newhook. I think that is
Mm-hmm.
what the Canadians are looking for first and foremost right now in the trade market. And it's not by chance. They've identified this as an issue. They know that they need to add a little bit of established, even if it's established on the low end, an established piece that's going to be able to take a load off from these younger players and provide Martin St. Louis with a little bit more options because you saw it at the end of the game last night. Jared Davidson and Joshua Roy were glued to the bench.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's going to be the way, well then you might as well look at the waiver wire, which they had, and I knew there was interest in John Beecher. There's the Alex Texier situation that they're
Exactly.
following. The Canadians have been talking to the Blues. We know that for a fact. We know
Yeah.
that Texier was part of the, they wanted to see what was going on there. We know that there was interest with Jordan Kyrou. Is that a fit? Does that solve everything? I don't think so because I don't think a Jordan Kyrou would have necessarily been very productive against a more physical Washington Capitals. Yes, you bring the skill. Yes, you bring the offense. But what do the Canadians need? And I think there's what the Canadians need in a regular season context, which we all seem to have thought that they already had. And then
Yeah.
there's what the Canadians need to make it, far in the playoffs eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trading for a player like Kyrou, it's going to cost you, even
Well,
with the
even
full mill trade. And that's if
100%.
he
I think
decides to waive.
I think Pierre LeBrun and I think Darren Dreger backed this up that, to, I guess, reinforce what you were talking about, that in the summer they were talking to the Blues about, potentially getting Kyrou and then the no
Yeah, I
trade
could
kicked in
confirm
with
that.
his
I reported
contract.
that.
And then I think it was yesterday on the telecast that Kyrou's not moving. He's not moving for anybody at this point. So
For now.
even though he's been a little bit in the doghouse with the St. Louis Blues, and you talk about
Yeah.
wants and needs. This team needs a freaking stop. They need to make some saves to keep this team in it. Because to me, and this, I'm going to go silver lining on y'all here for a second, right? And we brought this up already, at one point in the show. But you're down 1-0, tie it up. You're down 2-1. You're down 3-1. It's 3-2. Boom, they score again on the Chikrin goal off the Wilson on Evans hit that goes uncalled, right? What happens next?
Yep.
It's 4-3. And then it's 5-3 when Sonny Milano dances as an off-balance Alex Carrier, right? And then it's 5-4. And then the Ovechkin goal sealed the deal. But man, brother, Jaden Struble had a great chance. And the Montreal Canadiens, that's my silver lining is They didn't throw in the towel at any point in that hockey game yesterday. And to me, that's very positive. And in my opinion, it's worth pointing out that they do not quit. They haven't shown me that we're done, we're checked out mentally.
Well, that's the difference. That's the difference between now and 14 months ago. Is 14 months ago, they looked defeated in situations like this. And the Canadiens have looked defeated at some points in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to say this. But the last 2 games, you saw dog in their game. You saw them fight back. Monday. And that to me is the number one sign that they're going to be able to bounce back. Now, the question is, how far are they going to be able to bounce back? Because I think there's going to be a regulation of their fluctuation, not too high, not too low, but I think they're going to be somewhere in the wild card race, exactly where they are now. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the East. I think that's where they're going to stabilize at. And then it's going to be a question of can Kent Hughes add to this team, and can one of their 2 goalies find some consistency? That's going to be it. And then the rest will apply solely on the shoulders of Martin St. Louis in terms of how do they go about creating a defensive structure that doesn't get overwhelmed by what happens on the ice.
I've been reading a lot of criticism around the coach. And
well, I think it's normal at this point to critique the coach.
Listen, I have time to listen to opinions, right? I'm here for it. But what I don't see is fair is that MSL and the coaching staff are the ones responsible for icing a red-hot Jakub Dobes. And they should have rode him, and they should have rode him, and they should have rode him, and let Montembeault figure out his own game on his own schedule with Eric Raymond. I fall back to the big picture, knowing what's to come. That, yes, the schedule was complimentary in October, right? And then it got tougher. And then here comes the juggernaut of the congested schedule. To me, it wasn't about October. It was about what's coming this season.
And again, like I was talking about this a little bit. The details were off even prior to these losing streaks, right? You go back to the game against the Seattle Kraken. You saw it in his body language. Jakub Dobes was starting to lose confidence already then. Yeah. So, to overuse a rookie who, after that loss against the New Jersey Devils, proceeded to cry in front of the media, I don't want to say this out of tune, but maybe Martin St. Louis knew something we didn't. Maybe he didn't want to overwhelm a rookie that he didn't think was ready for that number one. Yes, it's easier to be a backup and rack up those wins than to be asked to be the number one and do it on a consistent basis.
You're the man
for a long period of time. Yeah. Exactly. This is the same way he started last season, and then you saw him go a little down as they tried to give him more and more games. Well, the Canadiens were cognizant of that while also trying to get Samuel Montembeault going, because again, go and look at the schedule over the next 4 weeks. It ain't pretty. So I understand what they were doing. And to say it was a mistake, I think it would have been an eventuality. When a goalie overperforms, it's adrenaline, emotion. When reality starts to sit in, when teams have tape on you and they know what you're doing. Like, here's the one thing that fans don't know. 3 games in a row, I've gone into the opposing dressing room and spoken to the players, and they told me about the video work they did and how they were zeroing in on Montembeault and they were zeroing in on Dobes to see exactly how to beat them. And I'm not going to go into detail about what they said or how they said it, because it wasn't necessarily said for public consumption. But I will say that teams are analyzing Dobes way more than they ever did last season. And I'm not saying that Dobes is necessarily bad, but it's a respect. In fact, it's a sign of respect towards him. But there is a similar trend amongst the teams I've spoken to about how to beat both goalies separately, individually.
Sure.
And so it's up to the goalie coaching from top to bottom, not simply just Eric Raymond, but overall, to be able to work on those deficiencies, to be able to counter those deficiencies, but also from the Canadian staff that, for example, if Samuel Montembeault's high glove hand is being targeted by an opposing team, well, how do we take away that shooting angle from the opposition? How do we position ourselves in the high danger areas to ensure that pucks don't get through those shooting lanes? And I think that's the difference in sight and in conversation that you have when you build yourself out a central defensive unit to be able to counter players, especially on the rush, like we saw with someone like Ethan Frank.
I mean, the third goal. I mean, what a nice little lob pass from Protash. The one that sunk Monty's battleship there. And I think, you're watching the games, like you're seeing they're picking on Monty's glove hand. Like every time he's in there, they continue to
and this
do
goes
that.
back to the Edmonton game
100%,
on the road trip.
100%. So with that in mind, like if we expand the view on goaltending, I lean Dobes on Saturday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Your point of view on what direction they go with in net on Saturday against Toronto?
I think it's really tough to go one or the other. I mean, Dobes,
flip a coin, man. At this point, it's flip a coin, Frig.
Yeah, that's the risk you take when you pull a goalie earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know now, was it the right decision to take Montembeault out when they did?
I think. Well, yeah, yes. I'm not playing Monday morning quarterback. I didn't like two of the first 3 goals, but
I would have done the same. I would have told them.
To be harsh, bro, the third goal is inexcusable. You got to stop that all day,
especially right after you got beat the same way the first time. So, like, to me, you had to pull him. The unfortunate reality is that the Canadiens then proceeded not to play well in front of Dobes, and we have the outcome that we have, and he allows 4 goals. So now both of your goalies in the same game have their confidence shot. Who do you go back to?
Yeah.
And, Samuel Montembeault was 45 minutes early for practice today on the ice, already working. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's the one to start against the Leafs, though his record against the Leafs, not exactly very kind. So I'm glad I'm not the one making that call. So
no kidding.
Really,
no kidding.
Maybe he'll be motivated and stand up against the team, because many felt like the season opener against the Leafs, a lot of it came from him not really being able to make the timely save either in that game. So let's see if you throw him to the Leafs, because they're playing the Leafs on Saturday night, basically 2 of the next 3 weekends.
Exactly.
Right?
Correct.
Saturday against Montreal, tomorrow against Montreal, and then December 6th against the Leafs in Toronto. So you're gonna have to play one of them, if not both of them, in those scenarios. I personally believe that it'll be Dobes, but I think part of me, just by the information that we saw today, part of me thinks Montembeault will get the start.
So we'll see. All eyes glued to this channel as always. Thank you for that. And very unlikely. I don't think Austin Matthews is going to play. We'll see what happens with Matthew Nyes.
Well, he was skating. They were both skating today.
Okay, so we'll see. We'll see. Scott Lawton had a better game. Easton Cowan, better performance. So we'll see what version of the Leafs. But the Canadians, be prepared here. Here's the thing, and you know this better than I do. Like the danger of Kakkonen, like in the hypothetical world that they've seen enough, they need this guy. They arguably could lose him for nothing, right? Because he'll have to go on waivers if they want to send him back down to Laval Kakkonen, right?
No, that's not the case. So goaltenders, all players basically, once you go through waivers, you can be called up and play 10 games or be on the roster for 30 days without needing to go back through waivers. And that's if they do regular waivers. So what does that mean? What do you mean regular waivers? Well, we definitely saw when the Canadiens got injured initially, there was a call-up. There were call-ups that were made. For example, Mark Delgaizo. Whenever Mark Delgaizo is called up, because he's waiver eligible, they call up Mark Delgaizo as an emergency recall. What does that do when it's an emergency recall? Is that you have 6 defensemen, and there's a possibility of one of your 6 defensemen being injured. You can make an emergency recall, and that the time that player spends in Montreal does not count against his waiver timer. They can't do that in net with Kakkonen unless there's a perception or some kind of guarantee or or a risk that one of the 2 goaltenders won't be able to dress for the next game. So they could recall him, but it would start the counter. They would have 10 games of him playing, or 30 games on the roster, 30 days on the roster, and then they'd have to put him through waivers again. So there's no risk in doing that. The only problem I think I would have with that is I don't think Dobes is the issue. And in fact, there's a lot of fans that believe that Dobes should be the one playing more right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And the other thing I would say is I just don't think that Kakkonen, like, he's not been playing bad in Laval. I think he's been okay. He's been pretty good in some games, but I just don't think that calling up someone to be your backup is necessarily going to fix the problem. And if anybody's looking to give Kakkonen the net on a regular basis, I respect your passion, but you may be dreaming in Technicolor, because this guy, there's a reason why he's an AHL veteran backup, right? Like, he was excellent for the Charlotte Checkers last year in the AHL playoffs. I thought he was great, but this is a guy who at his best is an NHL backup, and that's totally okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't expect like a guy that is seen as a good goalie in the AHL to just come in and magically become Tim Thomas for the Montreal Canadiens. It's not going to happen.
Let's put some comments on the board, some comments, some reactions, some questions as always. Sammy, I'm disgusted with the lack of pushback on Tom Wilson. Did we forget last year's playoff with Wilson making fun of us, taking an elbow to Evan's head with zero accountability? Shame, says Sammy. By the way, uncalled, and Chikrin scores right after that. And as we elaborated earlier in the show, you can go back and watch with the reaction here to the lack of pushback, the fact that Struble and Jack even Josh Anderson, who obviously got into it with Tom Wilson last year, right? We saw this. The Canadiens tweeted this out. Evan's not practicing today. We should find out more tomorrow. Yes.
That's expected.
Yeah. What about this one? Maybe we have an eye doctor. Sam Montembeault nearsighted, has consistent trouble picking up point shots. Like the puck track.
This is correct.
Like, even like before Jakub Dobes, allowed the 4 goals, like he just, to me, I'm far from a goalie expert and I don't pretend to be one, but like even how Dobes positions himself to get low to find a sight line is just more engaged than Sam Montembeault. Is that something that you see? Is like Montembeault's puck tracking failing him at points?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's something I pointed out on the road trip as well. Like, and this is not simply just a Montembeault thing. It's also a Dobes thing. But I think point shots, if you look at the amount of goals that have come, point shots are the enemy here. Like, significantly the enemy, or shots from far are the enemy, not because simply just they can't track the puck, but it's also deflections in front of the net, being first on the puck. Like, part of that is the goalie. The goalie should be able to track that, should be able to stop that. But it's also how the team defends in front of them. That's the issue for me. Like, those far shots, like you think back to last Saturday's Mason Lohrei shot that came from basically the left point, right? Yeah. That needs to be stopped, but you also need to get the F out of the way so that he could, either you're pushing guys out of his way or you're getting in the way to block the shot, but you can't do both. Right. And so this is where I say, like, confidence, right? And when it comes to the defensive structure, they're converging back on the goalie as opposed to attacking the shooter because they're afraid to get out of position and break the structure of the defensive cycle, because they stay put. They don't move around with efficiency in their man-to-man coverage. Well, this is what happens. Those far shots either get deflected or they get the goalie's line of vision is blocked because of all the traffic in front of them, and it goes in. If anything, the Canadiens should be taking a page out of their opponent's books and doing that themselves. It's what resulted in Brendan Gallagher's goal. It's what resulted in most of the goals on Monday night against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's an eyesight thing. I don't think it's a vision thing. I definitely do think it's a confidence thing. And when it comes to Samuel Montembeault, I thought he tracked pucks well last night when he was playing. It's just the shots that were taken. The Ovechkin shot is the only one I fault him in terms of not being able to track coming. The other 2 shots were right and tight and in on his glove side. I mean, track all you want. The puck's right in front of you.
It feels like, man, it feels like just this constant, we're like a metronome. We just keep the tempo of get to the net, get to the net, get to the net. Like, God bless Cole Caulfield. I like Cole Caulfield's game yesterday. He was aggressive in his shot selection. He fired a lot of pucks. I think he finished with 8, if memory serves me right. But I mean, God bless him. I mean, at one point he's the screen. The guy's like 5'5".
Well,
and he's
the screen. I was going to bring that up.
They made it relatively easy again for the opposing goaltender. Charlie Lindgren pretty much saw everything that was steered his way.
on his knees.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, when the Canadians front front end guy on the power play, when both of them have a cumulative height of 5'8",
Yeah,
like an average height of 5'8", you're
yeah,
not getting anywhere. You're not getting anywhere. And that first power play wave, I stress this again. If the idea is to put Cole Caulfield in the bumper when Zachary Bolduc is on that power play, then I don't understand what Zachary Bolduc is doing on the first wave of the power play, with no disrespect to the man in any
yeah,
way, shape, or form. But
yeah.
Juraj Slafkovsky has absolutely nothing to do as a shooting option on the first wave of the power play on the right circle. Like, it just,
Mhm.
he should be in the net front. Caulfield should be on the left circle. Suzuki is at his best when he's in the bumper, and then you put someone with high end talent on the right
Yeah,
circle. If you want to
yeah.
put Bolduc there, put Bolduc there. Fine. If you want to put Ivan Demidov, like most fans would want, fine. Then you're running a beautiful diamond formation, and then you could, get back to basics on the second wave. But it's not for nothing that the second wave has looked more dangerous than the first over the last couple of games. Noah Dobson's getting pucks on net. They're driving to the net. They're trying
Agreed.
to get into the crease. You got to get back to basics on that. And that's what we've been talking about for a while there.
What do you think's going on? I want to put another comment on the board. Let's talk about Demidov for a second. I mean, are we watching a young man hit a little bit of a wall, playing on different line combinations, taking off the first wave of the power play? As Stefan brings up this question, Marco, Shaun, be honest. Do you think Ken Hughes has been drafting well during his tenure as general manager of the Montreal Canadiens? What do you make of Ken Hughes' draft record so far?
I think it's too soon to tell.
Yeah.
I think you can. It's been 3 years since the 2022 draft.
Is there anyone you
And
don't like? Is there someone that you don't like that you can?
well, I don't think the Philip Meshar pick was a very good one where it was.
Yeah.
Right. You can make the argument for Juraj Slafkovsky. I wouldn't. I've always been on the board that center would have been my logical choice when starting a rebuild. As we can see, it's the hardest position to fill. But I understand Slafkovsky. I understand the Slafkovsky pick. The Canadians were extremely small. Shane Wright was disappointing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my cup of tea. Ryan Backer, again, I am not an NHL general manager, but Ryan Leonard was always my pick. I know everybody Michkov, but
Yeah,
I
I
have my
agree with you.
reasons for not
Yeah.
touching that. But
Yeah.
Ryan Backer for sure. And again, I don't understand the love affair with Liam Greentree versus Michael Hage. Like, he gets points in the OHL. Okay, look at all the OHL players that got points in the OHL last year in the NCAA right now. I ain't doing much. So I would be very the foot speed on Liam Greentree versus the foot speed on Michael Hage. I think Michael Hage is going to be just as effective, if not more effective, of a top 6 player as Liam Greentree. So I am not worried about that in the slightest.
Yeah.
Ivan Demidov, I don't think we can really complain. David Reinbacher, like I said, you could have the complaints that you want. Getting Jacob Fowler in the 3rd round is an absolute steal.
Yeah.
So you win some, you lose some. Adam Engstrom in the 3rd round is an absolute steal. Is he worth more than a 3rd round pick today? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's all about what you do with those picks, right? Alexander Zhuravsky, where he was picked, I mean, I think he's a 1st round talent. Do I think he's this almost as good as Demidov prospect that, certain people that got ahead of themselves were saying when they saw his first 10 games in the KHL? No, but I still think he's a 1st round talent that they got in the 2nd round. And I think that's good drafting there too. So, Bryce Pickford has been playing fantastic in the WHL. I've liked what I've seen from him. So given that, and given the way that they've gone about trading 5 1st round picks in the last 4 years, I think that when they've been drafting, they've done a good job, or a good enough job. I think just getting Demidov and Hudson would be enough for anyone to be considered good at their job. But could it have been better? Oh my God, yes.
Well, that's I mean, how many teams can you point to say, man, you guys just nailed this draft all round?
Well, I mean, look at the Chicago Blackhawks. Right? Everyone points to them. The Chicago Blackhawks, yes. The Chicago Blackhawks drafted Frank Nazar with the 13th overall pick, yes. But they also drafted Sam Rinzel in the late 1st round, and that was a home run pick. But they also drafted Kevin Korchinski 7th overall, and he's still in the AHL. He's doing a lot better right now, but let's just say that Chicago Blackhawks fans' hype on him is much less than what it was when he was drafted. Same applies to 2023. No, it was 2024. I apologize, because 2023 was Will Moore, who's doing very, very well, and obviously Connor Bedard. But 2024, you look at the way that the Blackhawks drafted, Sacha Boisvert over Michael Hage right now doesn't look too good. Boisvert hasn't been able to stay healthy for BU, or when he was playing, I believe in the Big Ten or the NCHC last year. I believe he was playing for North Dakota. I'd have to double check. But again, like Sacha Boisvert hasn't necessarily played to his 100% capability. So it happens. The Canadiens are a team that have drafted relatively okay. Could it have been optimal? Absolutely. Absolutely. The only thing I would say is that, unfortunately, a lot of their experiments have blown up in their face. You look at the Kirby Doc experiment, didn't necessarily work out. The Alex Newhook experiment looked like it was about to take off, gets injured, right?
Agreed.
So some of it is on evaluation potentially. Some of it is simply just bad luck, and you kind of have to work with that. So knowing that, I think the Canadiens have done an okay job in that department. I think there's still more room for them to improve, but I don't think they're there yet. As we get into year 3.5 of this rebuild.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be back Sunday at noon for the Sunday 10 a.m. live show as we dive back into the Montreal Canadiens waters. We'll see how they perform. I mean, everybody that watches this team, that watches this channel on the regular, we all know what we're watching. We're watching a very injured, fragile group right now. And we'll see. Well, there is no update on Jake Evans other than he's not practicing today. He obviously did not finish the game after the second period hit. He played 28 seconds more, and that was it for him, as the Montreal Canadiens have given up now, a combined 15 goals in their last 2 Thursday games, losing 8-4 to Washington. Final thoughts, Marco?
Yeah, no, I think it's been, I think there's room for improvement for sure. I think their goaltending can only go up from here. I don't think that there's going to be any magical solution, but I do invite fans. I think a game against the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to be very hard for them not to get up. These are two struggling teams looking for consistency. I expect them to be ready. Exactly. I think it'll be a group up game. So I think that they're well on their way today at practice, just seeing how they're playing. I think they're well on their way to being able to at least start the game with a little bit more assurance and not allow the first goal. So we'll see what happens there.
Big thanks to all of our sponsors as well. Good to see.
I was going to add to our sponsors. I was going to say we have to point out Canuck as well for their sponsorship of our show, because guys, it's about that time. Their Black Friday deal is starting on the 25th, and you don't want to miss that. Up to 40% off their jackets. Montreal-based company on Rochelle in the Plateau. You definitely want to go and check that out.
Nice to see so many people supporting cheapesttshirts.ca and Little Bear. Good to see so many people looking at our live show at McLean's. And of course, if you're looking for great home security systems, just so many comments keep coming. It was a weird day in the chat today. Very, very negative space in the chat today. You check out our friends at cabletel.com. An authority serving Quebec and Eastern Ontario. Great rates for home security and all the latest tech and advancements there. And a brand that's been in business serving Quebecers and on Eastern Ontario folks from the last 20 years. So cabletel.com is the website. Kremlin Gremlin, I am having it today. Don't you worry, boy. I am firing on all cylinders. The week has been good, but as always, it's moved fast. And we thank everybody here for being with us, spending your lunch hour on a Friday, on a rainy Friday here in Montreal. Marco D'Amico, thanks as always. We'll see you live Sunday at 10 a.m.
Have a good day, everybody. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.